Season's greetings and welcome back to Brave Ideas, where we chat with the leaders in commercial real estate to answer all questions space as a service and help office real estate reposition to meet the evolving demand from the future of work. If you're an investor, fund manager, developer, landlord, operator, property manager, agent, or broker, hit that subscribe button. And if you prefer to watch our show or join the newsletter, head over to braveideas.media. I'm your host, Caleb Parker, and before we drop our Season 16 finale next week, we've got a special feature with Jim Groves, CEO of Rubberdesk. This episode follows our collaboration with Rubberdesk to unpack their Q3 report on the UK flex market. We recently published 4 exclusives on braveideas.media, and we'll link them in the show notes below. If you read those articles and you want the full context, how the data is built, what's driving the patterns, and what to actually take seriously, this episode is the deeper cut. We get into what Rubberdesk is seeing across the United Kingdom, where London is tightening, where the regions are softening, and why more supply doesn't automatically mean more demand yet. We also talk about the shift towards managed offices and what larger enterprise customers are increasingly asking for. We close out with the future of flex brokerage, what gets automated, what doesn't, and where platforms like Rubberdesk are pushing next. A big shout out to Jess Morgan, Leanne Hewer, and the team at Carnsight Communications for the support on this collaboration. And I'll say this, the data that we unpack in these articles and on this podcast backs up a lot of narratives that we heard from our guests across Season 16. Now, before we kick off this special feature, here's a quick message from our Season 16 headline sponsor. If you're a flex operator still juggling spreadsheets and manual rate sheets, stop. You don't need to be a wizard to outsmart the big guys. You just need FlexSpace AI. It's your AI-powered revenue team that never sleeps, optimizing prices, automating marketing, and filling your space while you focus on your members. No burnout, no guesswork, no what-if tabs at 2 a.m. With FlexSpace AI, your building works as smart as you do. Now head over to flexspace.ai/brave and start growing your revenue today. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this special feature. Welcome to this Brave Ideas special feature, Jim.
Thank you. Great to be here, Caleb. Thanks for having me on.
I'm very, very glad to do this podcast with you. You guys really appreciate the collaboration that we've done over the last few weeks, breaking down your Q3 report, which I want to dive into in a moment. But you're fresh off a win from last week at the Flex Awards. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, great place to start. Honestly, I haven't stopped smiling. The team are over the moon. So Flex have one of their categories that they have an award for is technology initiative or innovation. And our instant quote engine that we built internally in Rubberdesk won an award. First time that we've ever put ourselves forward for an award. And I was saying before, as soon as we submitted a submission for it, I've never wanted to win anything as much as I wanted to win that. So it was, I was beside myself, and the team were as well. We had a couple of, had Anna Mears and Gareth Smith, Gaz, went and received the award. And we were thrilled. We were thrilled.
Well, congratulations. First and foremost, what went into the submission and why did you win?
Yep. So what went in was a tool that we built last year, which was the culmination of lots of building blocks that we've put into Rubberdesk. The submission was purely the ability to generate a quote based on an occupier's requirement, complete with where those offices are, the quote, showing with the offices that are available that meet the requirements of the occupier, given in natural language, with the available offices, the price of those offices, and some details around why they are appropriate for the occupier's needs and why they meet the needs. Which you kind of go, well, that's okay, that's okay, but we do it in 20 seconds. From the customer hitting go, here's what I need and where I need it and the type of thing I'm looking for using natural language. And we give them, well, you've got these 7 offices in this area that are a 10-person office at this price within your budget and with the amenities that you've asked for and why they're appropriate to you. So that kind of turns it around, turns, these quotes on their head, which have taken hours or days to get back to customers, and kind of reflect the high velocity world that Flex is. The high velocity and speed of doing deals that Flex is compared to the traditional real estate market. So yeah, there's and I said that that's kind of the what we put forward in the submission, but really it's been built upon a base. It's kind of the pinnacle of a pyramid where to be able to do that, you've got to have a platform with infrastructure, and you've got to know what offices are around and are available at any one time. You've got to maintain actual availability. You've got to maintain current pricing and accurate pricing. There's a lot of work that goes in terms of building the base of that pyramid to be able to get to the point where you can have AI generated quotes that are taking customer requirements and surfacing what's appropriate.
So you've built an AI tool that leverages all the data that you have on the market in your platform. And then when a customer is inquiring was searching for office space, it returns results to them It returns results to them in a sort of a chat GPT kind of way. It explains why these spaces are the right fit for them. It does it all instantaneously. And that's why you won this award.
Yes. And it presents it in a way which is usable. You got the BAT, you've got the listings themselves, which occupiers can drill down into and see the details behind. It shows the brands that we're presenting. So we don't hide any of that. We present the brands themselves with their logos and make it really transparent for customers. But yes, you've effectively summarized it much more eloquently and succinctly than I did.
Well, I think it's important that we continue innovating in our industry and
100%.
And leverage the tools like AI that's coming onto the scene. We've had lots of conversations on this podcast with the Office R&D folks, with FlexSpace AI, and it's great to see these kind of tools being implemented into a platform like yours, where I think the digital broker landscape, if I can use that term in a very respectful way, is hasn't evolved as much in the last, say, 10 or 15 years. So it's good to see that change. But we talked about the data that you have, and you're not just leveraging that data to enrich the customer experience. You're also leveraging that data to advise your operator partners and the landlords out there that are starting to lean into Flex. And in the past few weeks, we've been unpacking a lot of this data on the back of your Q3 report. Thankfully, we had this early access, so thank you for that.
No, not sure.
Can we talk a little bit about Rubberdesk, though, in general?
Yes.
Because there's, the OGs of this industry with Instant. You've got Office Freedom out there. There's loads of other names across different markets. Would you say, in your words, sets Rubberdesk apart? What is your USP, so to speak?
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity for me to raise that and answer that, because I would put us first and foremost as a technology company that is in flex space, in real estate. And everything that we do is about reducing friction to doing a trade, finding an office, doing a deal. Everything that we build is first and foremost for the occupier. And that's our core market. All the data we produce in the reports that we've kind of covered with Brave in this exclusive release has been the origination was to help customers provide transparency around the market. And so when I look at and think about how do we best service occupiers and how do we remove friction, for me, that's about creating transparency. And it's about addressing what is otherwise a very fragmented market. And so I put myself firstly into the shoes of an occupier who is looking for a 10, a 20, a 30, a 40 person office and what they might do in that process. Well, you can do a search and it makes it really hard to Google and find your local office, and you might find one brand, but that doesn't help you cover the market. And when you do start to unpack through other aggregators, you don't get an awful lot of information in terms of real pricing. And so everything we've done has been around creating transparency by presenting customers with actionable insights being, here's a 10-person office, here's who it's provided by, here's the cost of it, and here's what you're going to get included, and giving them a real clarity around that. So I think this is a market which is traditionally very conservative, slow moving, just because of the nature of the asset class, right? I mean, it's a super stable, super conservative asset class, but Flex within that asset class has the capability of being a high velocity sales environment where customers' attention span can be relatively short, and their ability to search among multiple locations is very easy. So we want to capture that engagement and answer their questions super fast, super quickly, and super appropriately.
Jim, I hear you on the transparency, and I think it's fantastic to be able to give customers transparency in the market. I appreciate that you're letting people know what brand it is, because for so long it's just been an address because the brokers were afraid that they would get, disintermediated and the customer would circumvent the go direct and so forth. But I think providing that transparency in numerous ways can be beneficial to the customer. But I want to hear from you why providing transparency is beneficial to the operator.
Yeah. So from my perspective, from talking to operators here, there's a few things. They can feature their brand, and they can feature their brand and their offering as well as their availability, and have that surfaced and made available to customers. What's the alternative? Well, they could put a line in the water with a fishhook of pricing from £200 a month, and end up getting something on the hook which isn't appropriate, which ends up wasting their time. So the real joining of value comes from us bringing well qualified, appropriate leads to operators who are then in a position to convert them. The conversation is about the product that they're looking at, not always and not just the price. And we'll get into it a bit when we start talking about the report, and I can talk fluently about all the weaknesses of the report, because it talks about, the median pricing and the average pricing, which I think is just one thing which is very, very blinkered in terms of the summarizing what the state of a market is. But there's so much more to offer that, but having that is an important feature that customers need to see. And so it gets people appropriate leads on appropriate tours, which end up signing deals.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into that report. What was the overarching theme of the report? Was companies need agility in the brave economy. I really appreciate the brave economy, because we are in a brave economy right now. You've got to be brave to run your business and sustain it or start one. But what's sort of the trend lines that you're seeing at a high level before we dive in deep?
Yeah. So, firstly, let me sort of unpack what the data is and how we produce the report. So every day we've got updates to operator availability that gets sent to us, and it could be through PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, etc. And we've got a whole bunch of, again, AI tools that help us unpack that and load them into the site. We've got thousands of listings which are updated regularly and frequently. And so when you have that, you can start to build up a time series of data. You can start to say, well, how many offices do we have listed today, and how many did we have this time last month and last quarter or last year? So by building that time series data, you can then start to understand trends. During COVID, for example, we saw an awful lot more availability come to market.
Naturally, yeah.
And yeah, exactly, which kind of makes sense. That resonates with people. We saw a typical supply market demand supply curve where increased availability and resulted in a reduction in pricing. So there's a lot more supply out there. Prices were coming down. So we saw these correlations kind of all make sense. We don't talk about what the total quantum of space that is listed by that is occupied by flex operators. We don't talk about the quantum of square feet that WeWork has, that Fora has, that whomever else has. We talk about what's available at any one time. And by available, it's what's listed on Rubberdesk. So you could say that that's just one sample set of data, and that's one point. But it tells an interesting story when you compound that over time and you look at what's available. So we've got, put in perspective, we've got about 155,000 desks for rent today in UK that are available on Rubberdesk. That's about 7.7 million square feet of office space, which is empty, looking for an occupier. So this isn't a small sample set. It's a pretty decent, statistically relevant data set. So what we've been seeing is a few different stories emerging. We've seen in London a take-up of space. So we've seen availability go down. And with that, small incremental price increases. There's a different story depending on the size of office space and also who the provider is. So we're seeing managed offices and serviced offices behaving slightly differently and different sort of outcomes there. We're also seeing differences between core London markets and regional markets like Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, where the pricing is getting softer in those markets, and availability is still, there's still an awful lot of availability, and it's going up slightly, marginally in some of those areas. So the regional markets look softer. Core London market looks in demand, would be our deduction from that. And as a result, pricing is getting firmer and going up across those.
In the third article you guys published around the flex divide across the UK, I found it interesting. You talk about London being, a hot market, the pricing is going up because availability is going down. It's almost a reverse effect in the regions as more and more supply goes into the regions. It seems like there's, which is a trend. The pricing is coming down a little bit, but which is I find interesting because there's this talk about the regions getting heated up and companies seeking out lower cost options in the regions, which you think that demand would cause the price to go up.
Yeah.
But it signals to me that the supply is leading the demand right now. It's coming in and saturating the markets in anticipation of that demand. So maybe the prices are coming down from a competition perspective.
Yeah. And I think there is a lot of competition. It's a super competitive market in every aspect, from broking to operators. It's a pretty ruthless and super competitive environment that we're in, and I think it's just the real estate market is amplified, and in terms of speed and competition. So
yeah, and from Birmingham to Leeds to Manchester and beyond, you could see the differences. There's not a one trend across the entire UK. It's different, specific to each market.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. The data set for those markets that we have is still big, and it's relevant. We don't try and draw too many conclusions where the data gets too thin, because you can just have a new center open up and all of a sudden it looks like there's a huge amount of availability gone in there. So, what's driven. And so it's, so you have to kind of look where there's statistically relevant data sets, but certainly in those locations, in those cities, it's relevant. The story seems somewhat different, but then it doesn't take an awful lot to cause a ripple. A ripple could be caused by an enterprise client leaving. It could be caused by a new centers opening. So there is not a fragility, but there is data can amplify and overemphasize something. So that's why I'm often quite open to just saying, hold my hands up and go, let's not throw ourselves at the mercy of the data gods. There's interesting stories to be told there, but we can't live and die by them.
Well, you mentioned enterprise. There's been a trend across the world right now, in the UK for sure, where more and more larger companies are exposing their portfolios to flex. And it used to be that, they go into a new market, they go take a serviced office in that new market until they got ramped up. But now it's becoming strategically part of the mix that allows them to sort of breathe as a company, grow and expand or contract. What sort of enterprise trends are you seeing?
Yeah, so the drivers for that are, you're spot on. That ability to breathe, I like that analogy. The agility that it gives enterprise occupiers with that is certainly huge, be it their remote locations or adjacent to their core, and for project space, etc. So we're seeing it becoming more and more part of a enterprise feature. I think it's at the expense of the traditional lease than outgrowing serviced offices, and it's typically, there's a few different products in there. So it's managed offices, managed services, which is really gaining the largest traction with enterprise. As soon as you hit upwards of 40, 50 person offices, then managed is a great option for enterprise or any business that's looking for space. And it gives them their own brand, their own feel, but without the overheads of managing the space themselves.
Yeah, the growth in that managed office product has been skyrocketing over the last year, 18 months, phenomenally. It's always been a product that's been around. It's a product that's been around for quite some time, but the take up of it is huge. And I think you rightly said it's not at the mercy of outgrowing serviced office. It's actually eating into the traditional office space. Flex is eating the world, which I appreciate. And I think that the traditional office will always be there. There's going to always be
Yeah.
large enterprise companies that need that footprint in a city. But the agility that's required today in the brave economy, we need flex. We need that flex offering, and to be able to have your own brand, like you're saying, for maybe a more stable period of 3, 4 years, 5 maybe, but have it serviced like a serviced office. I mean, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. I think the agility. I mean, if you think about timescales, let's say you sign a 24-month term for your business, and your alternative in the old days was a 10-year lease. Then you've got 5 times as much agility in your product, in your space, than you had in that 10-year lease. You got 5 times as much opportunity to perhaps downsize, to relocate, to grow. And so these opportunities are what we're finding occupiers demand now, and they need as a part of their portfolio. And I think it's important to look at that portfolio mix. And if you draw a line from where we were 5, 10 years ago to where we are today, and then where we might expect to go in the future, I know that there's talk of it being, 20% by 2020, by 2030 of commercial real estate being flex. Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, if 1 in 5 floors are flex or have some flex component to them, and perhaps then what every tenant report, every occupier's report should have a flex component on it. And I just don't think that from a broking perspective and from an agency and tenant representative perspective, we're properly servicing occupiers in the way that they are going to need that information and present that as an option for them.
Well, our mutual friend Tashi down in JLL. Tashi's been putting out some really good content on LinkedIn and
Great.
YouTube, and he's talking about what we call the full stack office. He's talking about a fully flex building where they've got the co-working elements in the building that sort of anchors the service elements, but then having the managed office floors sort of fill in the rest. And so I would argue that there's another couple layers into that building where you'd have also some traditional office and some food and beverage experience, some wellness, sort of a mixed use. But
100%.
As in our audience on Brave Ideas, we have a lot of real estate investors, fund managers, but also operators and landlords. And I think my operator friends start seeing the landlords jumping into the flex. And we just coming off the back of an event recently where we had 2 panels. The first panel was 3 landlords who are doing flex themselves, and the other panel was an operator and a landlord who've done 3 partnerships together. And so talking about the differences between doing it in-house versus not. And not every landlord's at scale or has the capability to do it themselves, so therefore the partnerships are important. Are you seeing on Rubberdesk more landlords putting their managed office inventory onto your platform?
Yeah. The managed office inventory on Rubberdesk has grown from 32% last year to 43% this year in the latest Q3 report. 14% of all our managed offices, and I don't know what the maths is behind what 14 of 43% is, but 14% of all our managed offices are provided by landlords under themselves directly or under their brand, what their brand that they're delivering under. So we have seen that in UK particularly. And let's be clear, right? So UK is leading the way globally in terms of, I think, flex in general, but also the managed product and landlords stepping in to provide a product. Overseas, elsewhere, we're seeing landlords starting to, but it tends to be independent landlords, smaller and in probably less core CBD, core city locations. But there's a real mix. And so we do have some that are providing it. What I think there is, and perhaps it's interesting, your your panel, the panel that you had, there is a real spectrum of offerings. If you said to an operator, what do like, they could say, well, where do you want to begin? We've got all sorts. We've got the hotel management agreement. We've just got an operations agreement. We've got all different flavors. We've got F&B. We've got all sorts of things that are going to be included. We've got third space, running those. There's all sorts of different flavors. And I think with the same is with landlords. Do landlords operate it themselves, or do they get somebody in to help them design and implement it and run the hospitality, and then they take it over a period of time? And so there's all sorts of flavors of how landlords can get involved, and it doesn't have to be binary. It doesn't have to be landlord taking all that risk where perhaps they sometimes lack the skills to deliver on it, and without knowing the design layouts to achieve the optimum usage and commercialization around it, or the hospitality aspects, or even the sales networks and the dynamics, or the operational side of things. So there are options for them to get upskilled and bring in third parties, be it an operator, the hotelification I know that you've talked about in the past, or have somebody come in and white label it for them, and then take and grow that knowledge in-house. So there's all sorts of flavors. It's not binary.
No, it's not. I like to use the term plus not versus. When I was looking at the data, reading the articles and looking into the report, one question that came up for me, is there a trend line, or can we point to any particular flavor that is having success in terms of closing more deals or getting a higher deal rate or contract value or longer term or renewals? Is there anything we can point to that investors, operators, landlords can say, oh, okay, well, this is a good direction. Let's start thinking about how we go that direction.
Yeah. I would love to say, yes, there is. Here's where that data lies, and here's what it looks like. The focus of our data. So the short answer, no. The data that we have talks about what's available and what price is it listed at. The conversation around where are deals being done and who's winning the most deals and what rates and what discounts or incentives are they having to offer. You can't ask a broker that question. It kind of needs to be driven from the operators themselves to disclose that in a way that it's perhaps some anonymity, and it's aggregated to a point where no operator is giving away their secret sauce or their costs, discounts, etc. And there are moves to do that. You've spoken to John, John Williams of doing the Win Network, right? So
I think what Workspace Intelligence Network's it's a great initiative. I think what they're doing is fantastic. I just imagine that if you're seeing a lot more landlord inventory coming in managed by landlords, if they're winning more business because they're able to go direct to the customer versus the operators who are adding a lot of service, then, well, that's a signal to investors. But quite the same, if the opposite's happening and, the landlords are winning business at a lower rate, but the operators are winning equal amount of business, but at a higher rate, then maybe that says a lot about community and service. So I would be curious, even if you can't disclose it, or if you could disclose it anonymously, I'd be curious to see that trend line, if that's even a data point that could be assessed.
Yeah. No, it's a fair question, and I think there's value in it for investors, and I get that. That's not something that we've ever tried to cover.
Well, you talk about the occupiers being your main customer base, and we talked about the enterprise deals, 50 plus desks, growing, managed offices. Is there a trend line there that we can dive into around, I don't know, lease length or a certain criteria that's being asked for more than it has in the past, or the deals that are being done that sort of says, okay, well, this is what occupiers of the larger footprints need?
I've been surprised that occupiers are asking for longer terms than they have in the past. And I think
longer terms on a flex space.
Yeah. Looking for 24, I say longer term, 24 months, right? So we're not talking 5 years, 10 years, but we are talking, but 24 months is a longer commitment than we've been seeing that rise. What else are they looking for? They're looking for the larger space you have, the more internal meeting rooms that they want, and the fewer shared amenities that they demand. So it kind of becomes this mirror of what we've got in the service in terms of the smaller demand side and smaller requirements, where customers want to get greater value because they've got their own office, and then they've got access to a whole suite of shared amenities. And the larger deals, the enterprise deals, are looking for more self-contained and access to fewer of those shared amenities. Still, the core drivers seem to be quality, obviously, and with quality comes amenities, be that wellness space, and event spaces, access to event spaces, and the like. So there's a few trends that we see happening.
And when they go into these spaces, presumably whether it's a serviced office company providing a big managed floor or it's a landlord providing that managed floor, but they're going into a building. The stack of the building has these access to event spaces and other amenities for wellness, F&B, etc.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's kind of becoming the table stakes for businesses now to attract it. Maybe, I don't know, what did it used to be in the past? End of trip, right?
Yeah.
End of trip used to be the thing. Where am I going to park my bike? Is there a shower? Now now there's not just showers, it's towel service. Now there's a great food F&B offering which caters to your office, that can deliver products. There are wellness activities. I was looking at one the other day that had a steam room, sauna, ice baths, and it's just to another level, that wellness facilities. And I think it's talking more about how do we give our team that come into the office a great experience and make this a great place to work, rather than how do I look after the people who want to work from home, and how do I manage my office with these people. The people who aren't in the office aren't the start of that conversation anymore. It's not about, I've got these people who aren't coming in, and so I don't need this. It's, I've got these people who do come into the office, but where do I find somewhere where I can reward them for that engagement and give them a premium quality offering and make this a great place to work and make sure they do still keep coming in. The
That's a
days of
signal.
100%, it's a signal. That's a real quality metric and a real quality signal, and a great signal for businesses to be throwing out there. 100%.
Look, I think people want to feel taken care of, and they're going to naturally go to places where they feel like they belong and they feel taken care of. So it's great to hear that companies want to take care of their people. That's sort of you would think would be common sense. To see that that's happening is great. And I think on the panel that we just had with the landlords leaning into Flex, I sort of was a bit negative about that previously, thinking that landlords really focus about putting the investor at the center of the universe, and they don't really think about the customer. But it was clear to me that these landlords who were delivering Flex themselves, they were absolutely thinking about the customer and putting them first. And I was impressed. And so if more and more companies are putting their employees' experience front and center, and landlords and operators are delivering on that experience, wow, I think the office is far from dead.
I agree. I mean, the landlord's engagement, some of the landlords, not all of them, have got this right.
Certainly.
And there are certainly some who are looking at it with the mindset of it being a sales suite for a leasing option upstairs, as opposed to it actually filling a need. But yeah, they are becoming more and more engaged in this as an asset class, as a part of their product set. They know that they have to compete on quality rather than just on price. And I think it kind of talks about there being this spectrum that we've got in terms of our industry, and why there's a need for the likes of Rubberdesk, where it's not all just one flavor of office that you can take, right? You've got, as an occupier, you have a choice of where you go. It's not all driven on price. It's driven on a whole number of metrics that occupiers look at, and you can either be real budget and you're just filling a niche which is the most bums on seats for the fewest pounds spent each month, or you're filling a requirement which is having seats which do get occupied and people don't just work from home because this one wasn't very good, right? If you can mandate your staff come in and you don't care about what environment they have, you don't care about your churn or your turnover or your staff satisfaction, then you may end up going for this. But we're seeing more and more going towards the quality and the premium end. That might not carry across so well when you put this out on Spotify, but you know what? It would just be an incentive for people to look at the video with my hand gestures showing one end of the spectrum to the other.
Well, I will say that
really
if you're
good.
listening to this and you want to see Jim's hand gestures, just go to braveideas.media and you can watch it.
What a plug. Love it.
There we go. Look, I think it's great to hear this. And companies don't get desks so they can be occupied. Companies don't take offices so they can be occupied. They have offices and workplaces to create cultures and to give an experience to their teams, to showcase their values to their customers. And whether those seats are occupied or not is less about the seat itself, and it's more about the culture of the company in my view. But I love that you're saying that people are no longer saying, how do I get people back into the office? They're really focused on the people who are coming in and delivering a premium experience. That is a signal to me, and it's exciting to hear.
Yeah, it is. It is an exciting time, right? Because we've been through some darker times when that wasn't so much the case, and now it's a good quality metric to have.
So you mentioned John Williams earlier, and big fan of John. I think he's a brilliant brain in our industry. But as we start to close this out, I want to think about the future for a second here and get your views on this. So John wrote an article sensationally titled "The End of the Flex Broker?" and it got a lot of traction. Let me just tell you that.
Yeah.
In a heated debate on LinkedIn. I won't name names, but John made some good points in that article about how, and look, it's a sensational title, but he doesn't say that the broker industry is dead, but similar to the office, it needs to evolve. And he lays out some of that evolution that takes place. So I want to ask you the question: in the future, all brokers get disintermediated. Is the broker industry going to evolve, and how?
Yeah. Great question. I don't have a crystal ball, but I am of the opinion that the product of Flex is moving and has moved faster than the broking community has. The tools that are around and can service the Flex market and Flex occupiers are different to anything that the commercial real estate broking has ever used before. And we're moving from the pay to advertise listings to something which is more workflow orientated and transactional in what is, as I've said before, a high velocity market. It's high velocity for a number of reasons, but one of the things is the ability for customers to make their own adventure and to find their own way. And so for brokers to get a piece of that pie or to add value, they need to justify their role. And their role needs to be as an advisor and helping customers on that journey to, again, minimize friction. I think we're already starting to see the rise of what's been called bedroom brokers. I don't particularly like that term. I think it belittles what is a really smart group of people.
What is a bedroom broker?
Bedroom broker would just be somebody who's gone freelance, who's gone on their own way and working as a consultant to help to prospect and find customers, and help them to prospect and find occupiers and help them find the right office space for their needs. Somebody typically who knows the industry really well, but is working freelance and not for one of the big agencies. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And it's something we've seen in other industries, effectively freelance consultants working independently. So one of the big things that I think will happen is that there'll be more tools available to them. And some of the aggregation products like Rubberdesk and others who have built tools and products for ourselves will then white label those tools and products and make them available to independents and larger agencies to help their customers.
So the democratization of broking.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
Exactly that. Yeah. There'll always be customers who want guidance, advice, and I don't think broking will go away, but I think it's going to be it needs to serve a purpose, which is to create efficiency, reduce friction, and get best outcomes for occupiers and operators.
Well, it's interesting because Michael Dubicki, who we know from being in this industry for 20 years, he has a tool called Flex Engine that's allowing the individuals in the broking community, it doesn't matter what brand they associate with, but the individual to have a profile and to match customers up with the individual because everybody's got different personalities, different specialities, different expertise. And so I think that aligns with the future you're imagining or you're helping create. So I like the idea of taking the Rubberdesk platform and offering it as a tool for those individual brokers. That's really cool. Is this going to be your next award?
We've got another award. We're already thinking about the next award. We've just released some AI tools, or built some AI tools, and we put them live on Saturday nights, which was to help us with the ingestion of large amounts of data. One of the biggest challenges you've got in terms of maintaining and helping customers is maintaining accuracy of data for it to be relevant. And we munch through an enormous amount of data. And so we've just plugged AI in there to be able to ingest a PDF, a spreadsheet, an email, whatever format something comes in, and turn it into something which is consistent on the platform and good looking for our customers and occupiers to browse and see, and then feeds into our AI instant quote engine as well. So yeah, that's our next thing. After that will be watch this space for the white labeled product for brokers.
All right. Well, watch this space. We will put links in the show notes to your LinkedIn, Jim, but also to the Rubberdesk website, to your Q3 report, and certainly the articles that you guys have been publishing on braveideas.media. I have some ideas for you, my own brave ideas, but I'm not going to record it on the podcast. I'm going to share with you offline afterwards, if that's okay.
100%. Yes.
So on that note, really appreciate you taking the time. It's been great to collaborate with you and Rubberdesk over the last month or so. And certainly we have to give a shout out to, Jessica Morgan and team over at Carnes Site, who's been great to help bring this collaboration together.
Yeah, they're brilliant. They're a force. And it's been brilliant with working with you on this.
Pleasure, Jim. Look forward to more and your trip to the UK next year. Have a wonderful festive season, and thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care of yourself. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe at braveideas.media. And I'm actively sourcing buildings for brand-led hospitality repositioning. If you have a lead, an owner considering a sale, or a partner brief, DM me or reach us at bravecorp.co. And until next time, take care of yourself.